Hello students, today we are going to start with our session number 5 of lesson number 1, communication skills. So the name of our next session, that is session 5, is barriers to effective communication. Now, what is effective communication? We now know that there are different methods of communication. Which are those? Those are non-verbal, verbal and visual. These are the three different methods of communication which we had seen till now in the earlier sessions. However, all these methods can only be effective if we follow the basic principles of professional communication skills. So now there are few basic principles of professional communication skills. Communication skills are required in many areas of our life, and professional life makes a very big part. So that's why in our curriculum we are going to see the 7 basic principles of professional communication skills. So all these principles are needed to be formal, to be professional in your communication. So these can be abbreviated as 7 C's, means 7 C's, because all the 7 principles are starting with C. So it is said in short as 7 C's, that is abbreviated as 7 C's. So what are those 7 principles? Those are clear, concise, concrete, correct, coherent, complete and courteous. These are further explained. Okay, so we are going to see it in somewhat depth, which is given further. Absence of any of these 7 C's can lead to miscommunication. So as we know that whenever we are talking formally, whenever we are at some professional place where we need to be professional, there is a standard code of conduct, means we are expected to talk in a very professional way. So for that, few principles are there, and if any one of it is missing, if there is any communication principle is missing, then what will happen? There will be a miscommunication. People may take whatever you are saying in a wrong way. So we have to remember all the 7 C's very properly and very correctly. We need to interpret it correctly first of all. So absence of any of these 7 C's can lead to miscommunication. Let us take a closer look at certain barriers to effective communication. Now, see it in the figure 1.6. First is clear. It means be clear about what you want to say. If we are not clear, if our choice of words is not correct, if our voice is not clear, if our voice is not audible, then the communication will not be proper. It will be improper communication. So I hope you understood what is meant by clear. Be clear about what you want to say. Your choice of words should be appropriate. Your tone of voice should be proper, and you should be audible to the audience, and also your language should be suitable to the people who are listening, to the age of the people. Second is concise. Use simple words. Say only what is needed. So concise means precise, means in short. You should not be using lengthy sentences and big words. You should be very concise. Use simple words. Say only what is needed. Avoid any unnecessary talk. Third principle is concrete. Use exact words and facts. So when you are talking at some professional place, then we should not be giving unknown facts, and we should not be saying what is not correct. So whatever we are saying, that should be concrete. If we want to say something, we should have examples and proofs about whatever we are saying. If we are going to quote any figures, those should be correct. Those should be taken from some appropriate place, some good book, some good website. So whatever facts we will be putting in front of people, those should be very, very correct. It means we should use exact words and facts. It will give a concreteness to whatever we speak. Fourth principle is use correct spelling and grammar. So this is a very basic requirement. Our spellings, if we are writing it, should be correct, and our grammatical mistakes should not be there. Fifth principle of effective communication, coherent. Words should make sense and relate to the main topic. Means our words, whatever we are speaking, should make sense to the main topic. We should not falter from our main topic. So if we are speaking about something, our whole speech should be related to that topic. We should not wander away in our speech. Sixth principle, complete. Include all the needed information. All the needed information should be included. We should not forget about any major or any important facts. So, our information should include all the needed information. And seventh, very important principle is courteousness. We should be courteous, means we should be respectful, friendly and honest. Yes, whenever we are at a professional place, then too we should show respect to each and every person, each and everything whatever is there in front of us. We should be friendly and honest in our communication. So these are the 7 C's of effective communication. Now we are going to see barriers to effective communication. There are 4 barriers to communication: linguistic, cultural, physical and organizational, or interpersonal. So these are the 4 barriers to effective communication. Let us see it one by one. First is physical barriers. Now, physical barrier is the environmental and natural condition that act as a barrier in communication in sending message from sender to receiver. So physical barrier, as the name suggests, there is some disturbance in the environment. It can be in the natural condition that act as the barrier in sending message from sender to receiver. So if there is a speech in your school and all the students are sitting very nicely to listen to this speech, we have arranged some great speaker, and suddenly if there is rainfall, then if the speech is in an open place, then there will be a physical barrier. Another example, if wind starts blowing and there is no electricity and the person is not able to use a mic, and if he is only speaking with his mouth with no mic, then the students will not be able to listen. He will not be audible to the students. So in that way, this is also an example of physical barrier. So not being able to see gestures, posture and general body language can make communication less effective. So whenever we are asked to come for an interview in person, so that is for this reason, because when that person is not present in front of you, then you cannot see the gestures, the posture, the general body language, which makes up almost 70% of the communication. But if that person is not present and if you are only speaking over telephone, then voice communication is only 7% effective, right? So for that matter, gestures, posture and general body language is very important. So for example, text messages are often less effective than face-to-face communication. So physical barriers, hope you have understood it. Now next is linguistic barriers. The inability to communicate using a language is known as language barrier to communication. Language barriers are the most common communication barriers which cause misunderstandings and misinterpretations between people. For example, slang, professional jargon, and regional colloquialisms can make communication difficult. Now, if somebody goes to some other country, for example, if you will go to China and you do not know Chinese language, and if you will try to roam around in the country, and if the people over there in the part of the country where you want to see, if they do not know your language, probably you will speak English to them, and if they don't know it, then that is a language barrier. You will have to communicate with the help of your facial expressions, gestures and postures, right? So you will have to make use of signs, or you will have to ask somebody to communicate what you want to say who understands your language. So language barriers are the most common communication barriers. It can also be there between the people of the same country, different states, yes. So people of Tamil Nadu, they speak only Tamil language. So if we go to Tamil Nadu and if we start speaking in English or Marathi or Hindi, even Hindi do not work there. I have heard about it. I have not experienced it, but many people have told me this, that people in Tamil Nadu, they speak only Tamil language. They do not entertain Hindi or English. So this is the problem, and then communication becomes difficult to such places. So which can cause misunderstandings and misinterpretation between people. Now for example, slang. What is slang? Slang is improper use of words in the language. So we do not know slangs of other languages. Professional jargon. So now there can be many professional jargons used in the work industry. So professional jargons means professional short forms. So if you do not know a short form, and if the people over there are using it every time, like for example in our school we write HW. So you know what is HW? HW is homework. But if some student from Bhutan will come to our school, and if he will sit and he will not understand what is HW, then he will have to ask about it. So there are some professional jargons in the work industry also. And regional colloquialisms. What is colloquialism? Colloquialism is again use of some words which are used in a different way. Like in India, we generally use are not. But if we'll go to America, people over there, they use aren't. The spelling is AINT. Or I want to go to market today. This is the language used by us, Indian people. But American people, how they speak it? I'm gonna go to market today. So that word gonna, I'm gonna go to market, and I am going to market. So this gonna is a colloquial word in their region. So if such kind of communication is there, and if the other person is not able to understand, then communication may become difficult. So just now we had seen linguistic barriers. So these are called as linguistic barriers. Now next is interpersonal barriers. Barriers to interpersonal communication occur when the sender's message is received differently from how it was intended. Now, these kind of barriers happen everywhere. It also happens within the same house. It can happen within the same culture also, because different people have different thinking, and because of that sometimes the person who is speaks with some different intention, and the person who is receiving the message, if he is not in a good mood or is having something in the mind, then the interpretation of the same message is taken in a different way. So this kind of barrier is called as interpersonal barriers. Barriers to interpersonal communication occur when the sender's message is received differently from how it was intended. As I just said, that you want to say something else, but the meaning of whatever sentences you have said is taken in a different way by the other person. Then this is called as interpersonal barriers. It is also very difficult to communicate with someone who is not willing to talk or express their feelings and views. So, as we know now from the communication cycle that it is a two-way process. Yes, you speak something, the other person gives you feedback. He first receives the message, then gives the feedback, and then you come to know how your communication is going on. But if somebody is not willing to talk or express their feelings and views, then it is very difficult to communicate with such people. Other interpersonal barriers can be stage fear, lack of will to communicate. Personal differences can create interpersonal barriers to communication. So these are some more examples. That is stage fear, when we fear to go on a stage for any performance. Lack of will to communicate. So you do not like to, even if you have something to say, because of being lazy, or you are not willing to communicate, then again there will be a interpersonal barrier. Personal differences. Somebody do not agree with your viewpoint. That is called as personal difference. The person who is sitting listening to you have completely different perspective of whatever you are saying. Then what happens? Instead of saying no, I don't agree with you, a person can choose to be quiet, and then there is a personal difference. So this can also be a barrier if that person fails to communicate it properly. Next is organizational barriers. Organizations are designed on the basis of former hierarchical structures that follow performance standards, rules and regulations, procedures, policies, behavioral norms, etc. So what are organizations? Organizations means companies. For example, our school is an educational organization. So there can be many different types of organization depending on what type of work they are involved in. Okay. So any organization, it is designed, it is having a structure which is formal, and in that there is hierarchy. What is hierarchy? Hierarchy means somebody is at the top position who is managing the whole organization. It can be a single person, it can be a group of people, it can be board of directors, it can be a managing director. And then people below the highest authority are given different posts for making the tasks easy. Each and every person is delegated their work, and this pattern is called as hierarchy. So there is any organization is designed on the basis of formal hierarchical structure. So there is a definite formal hierarchical structure in any organization that follow performance standards. So as people are being assigned some work, their performance standards are also set and they are expected to perform as per the set performance standards. There are rules and regulations. Yes, there are rules and regulations regarding various things. It can be documents, it can be the incoming and outgoing timings. Then procedures. Procedure is how some work is expected to be done. The way of working is procedure. Policies, there are some policies of the organization, means it is having some set of rules which needs to be followed by the employees. And behavioral norms, which are very very important. Behavioral norms means you are expected to behave in a certain manner, generally in a very very polite way. So this is generally the design of any organization. Now, all these affect the free flow of communication in organizations and therefore need to be suitably managed. So now, whatever rules and regulations, procedures, policies are there, these affect the free flow of communication in organizations. So because of that, the people working in an organization are not free to communicate in whatever they want. There are some set rules and they need to follow it and therefore need to be suitably managed. So for that reason, all these things should be suitably managed. So superior subordinate relationships in a formal organizational structure can be a barrier to free flow of communication. So now, as I told you, what is an hierarchy? In an hierarchy, there is maybe a one or person or a group of people who is at the topmost position, and then they have more hierarchy below them who is delegated with different types of works, and they are expected to behave in a certain way in the format of their rules and regulations. So obviously there is somebody who is superior and there are others who are subordinate. So because of these kind of relationships in the formal organizational structures, there cannot be a very very frank and free flow of communication. So also sometimes due to the stringent rules, the employees find it difficult to communicate with their peers too. Now, it means that sometimes the rules are so much strict and stringent. Stringent means strict, that the employees who are colleagues to each other, they are also not able to talk properly, communicate in a free way with each other. So such kind of barriers are called as organizational barriers. Next are cultural barriers. Cultural barriers is when people of different cultures are unable to understand each other's customs, resulting in inconveniences and difficulties. I am going to quote a good example for this barriers. So, people from different cultures, it can be people from different countries, it can be people from the same country but different regions, different states, different cities, different areas, different castes, different cultures. So because of all these different things, variety of things, there is a cultural barrier in communication. So when people of different cultures are unable to understand each other's customs, it results in inconveniences and difficulties. So people sometimes make stereotypical assumptions about others based on their cultural background. This leads to difference in opinions and can be a major barrier to effective communication. So I'll give a very very simple example for this, how people sometimes make stereotypical assumptions. Now what is stereotypical? Stereotypical means old assumptions which are typically from the same type of thinking. So now your grandmother, their generation, and your mother's generation and your generation, they will be having different set of thinkings, but If mother thinks the same as grandmother and grandmother thinks the same as her mother, that is great grandmother, then the type of thinking is said to be stereotypical, which means which has passed from one generation to another generation and the other generation follows it blankly. That is stereotypical assumptions about others. So people sometimes make stereotypical assumptions about others based on their cultural background. So they come from a typical background, cultural background, and they think in the same way about others, which leads to many problems. And that can be a major barrier to effective communication. Now let us see an example. A British boss once asked a new and young American employee if he could like to have an early lunch. Means the boss was British and he asked his employee who was American and who was also young if he would like to have an early lunch, like before the lunch hour, if he would like to have his lunch. So the employee was from the American background and the employee answered, "Yeah, that would be great." So what he said, "Yeah, that would be great." Now the "yeah" was misunderstood by the boss. The word "yeah" was misunderstood by the boss. He assumed the employee was rude. He was ill mannered and he was disrespectful. So, because of his cultural stereotypical assumptions, the boss assumed the American employee was rude, ill mannered, and disrespectful. The boss responded by saying, "With that attitude, you may as well forget about lunch." So, what did the boss say? "With that attitude, you may as well forget about lunch." So, which was actually very rude comment by the boss also. This left the employee startled and wondering. He didn't understand why his boss got annoyed. So the boss had received an entirely different message than what the employee intended to say or intended to convey. So this is an example of cultural barrier. Although there are certain barriers to effective communication, you can always overcome these barriers by following some best practices of effective communication that are listed here. So now let us see what are the best practices of effective communication. Ways to overcome barrier to effective communication. Some ways to overcome the barriers are given. First is use simple language. As I told you, we have to take into consideration the age, the culture of the people when we are addressing somebody. Do not form assumptions on culture, religion, or geography. Yes, do not form assumption. We should not assume. To assume means to pre-decide. We should not decide something previously on culture, religion, or geography of other people. Next is try to communicate in person as much as possible. So the communication becomes effective when we are speaking in person. Use visuals, means sign languages. Yes, use visuals, pictures to convey what you want to say. Take help of a translator to overcome differences in language. So as we discussed about the Chinese and the Tamil Nadu people, in such places, at such places, one should take help of a translator to overcome differences in language. And last is be respectful of others' opinions. So we should not disregard others' opinion on their face. This will make them feel bad. So for that reason, we should be very respectful of others' opinions. We should also keep our opinions, but we should have respect about others' opinion too. So here we finish with our next session, that is barriers to effective communication. Now practical exercise. Please complete this the same day when I send you the message, and send your completed activities to me. Now what is the activity? Act out a role play of salesperson in a shopping mall. So, one person will be a seller and one will be a buyer. So, you have to write this conversation and you have to read it out. Okay. So, for that purpose, what you will do, you will make a voice note as I am sending you this lecture. In the same manner, you will switch on the recorder of your mobile phone and you will read out whatever conversation you have written. So, it should be about inquiry about a television set, TV set, and the customer is from a foreign country. So you have to think about this situation and write a conversation between a seller and a buyer of a TV set. Enact the communication barriers or challenges the customer or salesperson may face while interacting with each other. So here, while writing, what you have to do, you have to consider that there will be few communication barriers as the people are from different countries, and in that manner you have to write your conversation. Second activity is write down 3 ways to overcome barriers to effective communication. So this also you will have to do on your own. You can write 3 different examples where somebody has overcome the barriers. 3 ways to overcome barriers to effective communication. The group members will then stand in a circle. Okay, so this we cannot do. So just write it and send it to me. So you will solve the exercise, multiple choice questions, only 2 and 1 subjective question. Write down the common communication barriers you may come across when you move to a new city or country. Okay, and here what we have learned. So in this session we are able to identify the common barriers to effective communication, and we have listed out ways to overcome barriers to effective communication. Okay, complete your work and send it to me.